In early 18th century England, Samuel Plimsoll was born poor and stayed that way until mid-adulthood. Failed businesses and financial ruin plagued him. When success finally arrived, Plimsoll never forgot the poor and their life situation. Eventually, he joined the parliament to help people who were as troubled as he had once been. One cause that he championed was the fate of the ship workers and the crews. In his time, England ruled the seas and shipping. Cargo ships were very often unseaworthy because they were overloaded with cargo and too heavy to endure storms. And in addition, unscrupulous ship owners and merchants expected to make outrageous profits on every voyage, whether it was successful or not. Because even if they reached the destination, they could gain great profits, and even if not, they were heavily insured, so they still make the profit. So for them, it was win-win, and for those poor people who were working on those ships, it was always lose-lose. That's why also this situation was so bad that they called those ships coffin ships. Studying the situation, Plimsoll engineered a government laws that limited the weight of the cargo ships. How they measured? Each vessel had a white line painted at a certain place on the ship outside of the ship's wall, so it can be visible. And when the ship was heavy enough, that is, enough in the water to be safe for voyage, the law prohibited adding more cargo. Because lower it was, the boat was, it was more difficult for this boat to fight against all the storms and difficulties on the ocean. The Plimsoll Line is the mark, the place, the measurement where we can say that literally enough is enough. And perhaps this Plimsoll Line is a good image for us when we are weighed down by responsibility, worry, grief, fear, pressure, when we feel like we are sinking. Does it sound like our world today? The cargo we carry weighs us down with worry and causes us to feel that we may sink. Or I would say, we actually do sink. Often these days, and the sinking is expressed in depression, despair, and on the other side, anger and disappointment. In today's first reading, Prophet Jeremiah describes the sinking feeling we have. He had agreed to become a prophet, and he had certain expectations how it will look like. But he now feels betrayed by God in some way. But he's bold enough and honest in prayer to say, "You have doubted me, O Lord." In other words, he feels fooled and betrayed because his expectations did not meet his situation. Jeremiah assumed that when he will be working for God, this will ensure him with good circumstances, the peace of mind, the serenity beyond understanding. And what he finds out, that in his life, in his situations, there were betrayal, rejection, and all kinds of trouble. And in today's gospel, we see Peter, who has his expectations for the Messiah, for the Son of God who's coming. And when Jesus is talking about the cross, he's rebuking Jesus, saying, Lord, forbid it. It cannot be this way. Because he's not able to see the whole picture. His expectations are not met with situation. You know, we start to sing when our expectations of life for God, for other people do not match up with our actual reality or situation. This can cause the sinking feelings of anger and depression. So often our expectations do not meet our situations. The less they are similar, the more we sing. So, how do we draw a spiritual or psychological Plimsoll line in our lives? Or in other words, how can God keep us from sinking? In today's gospel, Jesus gives us the image of the cross. He says we carry our cross like a heavy cargo in a weighted down ship. We carry our crosses, our worries, pressures, resentments, burdens, other people. We may think of this cargo as a cross. And looking at the cross, we see those two lines. This vertical line that goes up and down, we may think of it as our expectations. Our expectations are our thinking about what should be, could be, our dreams, wishes, hopes, and desires. We have expectations for ourselves, expectations for other people, expectations for our world. We have expectations about what we should think or feel or how we should act. And more often than not, they do not line up with our actually life. This discord between what we expect and what is actually happening is at the center of the pin of the cross we carry. And here we have the horizontal line. The horizontal line of the cross is our reality, real situation. The horizontal line of the cross is our Plimsoll Line, where the vertical and horizontal meets, where our expectations meet with our actual situation. This is where God is found in prayer. Prayer is at the center of the cross. And this enables us to adjust our expectation to our situation. Prayer helps us to getting on an overload cargo of expectations which sing our real life and make it better, make it understand better. Because God is interested in the place where our expectations meet our situation. And this is our greatest need because it affects our thinking, feeling, and acting. I think the best prayer which exactly talks about this and addresses this discord between what we expect and what is actually happening is the serenity prayer. And the serenity prayer goes like this. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. The serenity prayer invites God to teach us how to accept, which does not mean that we like it or want this situation to happen or we like this state, but to accept, which means to acknowledge that we cannot change this or that situation. Acceptance is only acknowledging what cannot be changed and not fighting against it. The serenity prayer invites God to teach us how to change what we can in our situation, what is in our power. Every situation, the horizontal line of the cross, is something we can control to extent that we could choose the next right or loving thing to do. Our responsibility is not to alter our expectation, but to invite God to change us and our expectations. Our responsibility is to work for the greatest good in every situation, but we are not responsible for the totality of our situation. Prayer gives us wisdom to know the difference between what can be changed and what cannot be changed. It gives us the opportunity to choose the next right or loving action so that we can be free enough to be love in action. So coming back to our first reading, Jeremiah experiences in prayer a relief. At first, he's angry with God, and yet he admits that when he's honest with God in prayer, he learns to accept what he cannot change, and he learns to work for what can be changed. Jeremiah says, "How can I refrain from speaking about the good that God does for me? Even though I do not like my situation, I wish that these things were different." There is one way to look at the cross in our lives. Let's take the current situation, the health situation, as an example of how this Plimsoll line of prayer may work for us. Before March, we had an expectation about the health of our world, our health, and how things are going to continue and how things were going to be. Suddenly, we confronted with this health crisis, forced to isolate, lock down, and social distance. This is and has been a painful and mind-blowing situation. And yet, through these months, we recognize that our expectations of even what is normal has been altered. We have, through prayer and God's grace, come to alter our expectations, to change our expectations for so many things that we took for granted. Our expectations do not meet our situation, and this is a very painful process. although we still do not like what is happening, when we can prayerfully come to accept, that is acknowledging the reality of our situation, we are aware now of what we cannot change. We also are aware through prayer about our situation and what we can change. We have learned to social distance, to connect with other people in different ways. Look at even our celebration of the Eucharist, our virtual and spiritual community. This is the grace and God's gift in all of these situations. In some way, our expectations has been exceeded about what is possible in human relationships, even without physical closeness. This current health crisis is a cross we all carry. Our expectations disappoint. Our situation is changing. And in the middle of the vertical and horizontal line of the cross, in the middle where our expectations, hopes, and dreams do not match our current reality, God is there, hanging on the cross, reaching out to us and inviting us to accept what we cannot change and to change what we can with God's own grace and Spirit and His own presence. So I invite you right now to listen to our reflection hymn based on the Serenity Prayer. You may close your eyes if you wish, or just keep them open, but listen carefully to the words and make this your own prayer. Settle down in the water of the Spirit. Let yourself float to your Plimsoll Line. Sink into God's arms in this prayer and be embraced on the sea of serenity.